Welcome to Sister Sis. Hey, 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 y'all. Did y'all miss us? Because we sure missed you. Look,
Mhm.
like and subscribe to our channel at Sister Sis 1988, as well as follow us on all our social media platforms at Sister Sis 1988. So we're coming again to you today with a phenomenal guest, Mrs. Sandy Sembler. She has a branding of her own called Sacred Sheep. I'm going to go ahead and toss the mic over to her after we introduce ourselves. Okay, guys, you guys need to tune in. So I'm Jamie.
I'm Latoya.
And I'm Calandra.
Okay, so go ahead, Miss Simba, tell us just a little smidget about what you have going on and why you got started, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for having me, all three of you. This is exciting. I love the energy. So I'm Sandy Sembler, as you said, and I'm originated out of Florida, but I have an internationally known women's group that where from there kind of spawns into couples work sometimes and what have you, called Sacred She with a K. And Sacred She was founded really through my healing journey, a healing journey to healing from trauma, past abusive relationships with myself, just really getting really clear and clean of who I am and how am I showing up in life and getting really accountable. I had an intervention with Tony Robbins in 2014 that was like 4 hours at one of his events. I had no idea what was going to happen when I raised my hand and he asked a question. And the next thing I know, we're going down this rabbit hole. And that's when he really pointed out that my immense masculine energy at the time was probably due to trauma. And so I had never heard that before. I thought I was just like a go-getter and I just got things done. And so it really started making sense to me. And I love to unpack things and then bring them back together. And I studied with these teachers around the world so I could understand masculine and feminine energies, not just through like the church, but really the energetics of not just men and women, but how the energies are actually in both men and women. It's not gender specific. Everybody's got a leading energy. And so it has been wonderful to experience not just masculine and feminine energetics, but feelings in the body, because the body needs to heal to feel. And that's so was opposite of what I had learned through counseling and other pieces. And it wasn't until I actually got the lessons in the body that I was truly start to transform and shift my life for good.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. And we are excited to get started and getting to know you and your women's group. It sounds very motivating. So I'll go ahead and start with the first question. So please explain how and why you created Sacred Sheep.
Well, I'll piggyback on what I was just sharing. I mean, it really was my healing journey. And I realized that as I was, in business and witnessing a lot of women that I was mentoring and entrepreneurship, that a lot of the women that I would see were successful in their own right, whatever that meant, not necessarily monetarily, but just they had maybe the partner and they had their kids and they had the car and they had blah, 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 but they still had this feeling of unease inside of them. And I realized that I resembled that remark, right? There was this inherent just feeling dissatisfied. And what I came to understand after this intervention with Tony and studying all these different teachers was that there is definitely polarity in life. There's hot, there's cold, right? There's pain, and then there's pleasure, and there's love, and there's hate. And is that way with masculine and feminine energies. And so what happened with me is I realized how many women were in that same cycle that I was in, generally attracting partners sometimes, or emasculating their partners, emasculating their sons. And how could I actually step into that and teach women that they could actually show up with their beautiful softness and their sovereignty, but also with their badness as well, that there's something beautiful about having boundaries and knowing what you want, but there's a way that you can show up in the world, knowing when to pull your masculine energetics, which is your boundaries, which is your goal setting, your get things done, with the feminine, which is, and also like getting here on time. Getting here on time was my masculine energy, right? Otherwise, if I was just in my feminine, I would have been showing up probably at 4:50 versus 4:30 when we made this appointment, right? So we need both energetics. And that really, really helped me also be even more successful in business with a lot less efforting. And that was super key. So I just decided to go ahead and I love mentoring, and I was involved in different MLMs and would do trainings. And this was just a way that I could actually give back to the community and also help women really heal their own masculine energetics, while also shepherding. They would shepherd their feminine into a safe place. Most women I have found that if they're leading with their masculine energies is because, as Tony mentioned to me, trauma, or they don't trust men for maybe something from their past. A lot of it's just passed down generation to
Mhm.
generation,
Right.
right? And so as I do, healing work and things like that, I mean, God's just has blessed me with some beautiful modalities that help me like have women go deeper to heal those traumas, heal those limiting beliefs, teaching women how to show up and call their own vows. So it was a calling. I mean, it's interesting. I love that question. There was no way that I couldn't do it. And I was going to honor, who I was and what I'm meant to do. I'm definitely a woman who teaches from her own experience, and I stumble and fumble and fall. And if you follow me, you'll see like the sequence of events in my life, and with my son, and my stepkids, and my business, and my partner, and all those things, right? And so I'm authentic that way, even though it's very messy. But I think we need more women. I'm sure you ladies will agree. More women that are willing to say, "I'm not doing it right, but I'm being it," and I'd rather be it than do it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us about the sacred sheep method.
The sacred she method is essentially, the seven step way to essentially become the woman that you want to be. It is a way that you begin to be the woman that you're calling in. Embodiment is, a lot of women think, or a lot of people think embodiment is sensual movement and dance. But actually, embodiment can be, for example, I have a client right now who has a very hard time accessing joy. Okay, so I'm getting into the method. So they have a hard time accessing joy. They become so burned by life that they actually have become almost addicted to pain, addicted to despair, addicted to being let down. And we can become addicted to our problems if it meets these six human needs. We could also get addicted to pleasure, but most of us, because our brain is made to make us safe, not happy, will get addicted to something that actually causes us to live in lack. So the method, what it does is that part about joy, for example, just a brief little tidbit there. If a woman has a hard time accessing her joy, which is our God-given right, we are born full of joy, right? We don't have to do anything for it. It's just done. And so I'll give a woman a practice, and like we practice piano, we practice, tennis. You have to also practice learning how to walk and talk in this feminine energetics. And so joy is a childlike space, and that's super feminine, super girly, super fantastic. But most of us, like I said, as the older we get, we're jaded. So I would give you a skipping practice, for example, or I would give you a practice to blow bubbles. And it sounds so silly, but if you do something enough, you begin to like all three of you smile at the same time. I mean, you can't think about blowing bubbles and be all stern and zoom in, right? You know what I mean? So it's and it sounds so silly, and it is. But we're really beautiful creatures. We are really made for change, but we have to trick this guy up here, this noggin, and that witch in our head that's telling us that it's too hard. But it isn't. It's just a matter of like repetition is a mother of skill. So the method really is, a training process, and women we get certified in the sacred she method, and they can go out and teach it. But it's essentially how we're going to get in the body and scrub out those roto-rooter, those areas that actually need some extra love, and then how do we actually reflect that back out to the world? How do we become the hands and feet? How do we actually like light another woman up? How can we actually show up in the world and not be competitive, but actually send so much more love? And teaching women too that the primally, when we gossip, for example, we all know we shouldn't gossip, but it's actually a primal response to keeping us safe. Women will be catty, women will gossip because they actually want to be safe, and they're shoring out like, who can I trust? Who can I not trust? And it's not pretty. It's just what we do. So the method essentially is a teaching process that I take women through who actually want to teach the method. But the method itself is how do we actually get in the body, heal those pieces, show up with our fullness and our true sovereignty.
Okay, wow, it's a lot. Okay. So next question. In what ways has your devotion to God's purpose shaped your perspective on the sisterhood? I see you mentioned you saying the sisterhood and
Yeah.
teaching and showing up in the fullness. Kind of give us your perspective on that.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I think God is in the senses, God is in everything. And so the more that I can slow down and just be in the moment, the more that I can appreciate everything that's before us, right? If I'm going so fast in that mode, I'm not able to actually experience life. And I think that's actually like a thumbing our nose at what God has given us, if we're just rushing through life and not slowing down and practicing gratitude. So there's not probably one moment because I think I believe I really live that. I mean, my mantra is I'm a beacon of light for God and I share God's love in a fun and funky way. And anybody that knows me knows that that's what I do. And so my programs aren't necessarily they're faith-based, but I mix in all these different teachers. And so what I've done is been able to attract lots of different types of women from all different phases in their life and different ethnicities and different religions and such. And so my goal is if I can just help women go an inch deeper in consciousness and an inch wider in their expression of love and who they are, that will actually help them open up their vessel so they can receive more of what God wants them to receive. So it's been fascinating witnessing women who see me like messy Sandy and full of emotion and all the things and then they actually most of the time will actually see God through a different light, like more of a relationship that maybe they didn't know before. And to me, I mean, a great question. I think everything's a devotional practice. Even I'm actually, speaking of sisterhood, I'm at a girlfriend's house, and we're going to an ecstatic dance thing later. And so I asked if I could just come to her space and film because it's right down the road, and I didn't want to be late for you guys. I didn't want to be late for her. So I mean, she's actually somebody I just met in September of last year, and I've
Mm.
only seen her like 3 times, but there was a connection. There was energetics there. There was like this some I could. My body has been attuned to know when I can trust someone and when I can't. And so it was like an instant love fest, right? So everything's a devotional practice. But I came here with my microphone. I came here with my little light. I came here with my camera. I came here. I always have like a sheepskin I sit on. I always have like a one particular glass that I drink out of. And it's my when I go on to someone's podcast, it's a devotional practice because I know that I'm going to be sharing God's love through Sacred She, through myself, and then I'm going to be able to give that back to you. And then you share that with your audience, and it's a ripple effect, right? So everything can be a devotional practice, even how we brush our teeth. I
Mm.
mean, and that's when everything becomes sacred. And I know you had asked where does sacred come from? Sacred is the holiness of how do we show up in the world. And I don't think we just have to go to church. I don't think we just have to practice embodiment movement whenever we're on the dance floor. I think truly I mean, if all of us, anyone that's listening, just want to slow down and just take their hands and slowly, like, just caress their thighs with their fingertips, it will bring you back into the body, right? Back into the body, even if it's just for a minute. And these are things that, trust me, 10 years ago, I was always on the go. I was so busy avoiding pain. And now I actually welcome the pain because again, it will allow me to experience, more pleasure as well.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. I'll go ahead and pass the torch to Miss Latoya.
All right. So, how has friendship played a crucial role in your personal and spiritual journey?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. Well, I think that, I believe that there's 3 phases of love, 3 phases of communication. The first is we call baby love, baby communication, where it's all about me. What about me? What about me? What am I getting out of this relationship? What am I getting out of this conversation? It generally isn't heart-centered, and so it comes across selfish or entitled or what have you. I mean, you think about babies; they are just me, 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 me. They need to get their needs met. It's primal, right? Stage 2 communication in love is what's good for me is good for you, and vice versa. Like his needs or his needs, her needs, and we're here like a mano a mano. And it's a beautiful way to communicate. If most people communicated like that, we wouldn't have war and what have you. In a romantic partnership, it's not super polarizing, but it's something neutralizing and alchemizing when we can come together and see each other's point of view. Now, stage 3 is where I like to live, although it's not easy. And that's the devotional practice of knowing when to give feedback, knowing how to give feedback, knowing when to ask for reflection versus feedback, because there's a difference. And if we notice, for example, that, a sister or a partner or kids or what have you, is not showing up as their higher self, we're judging them to not show up in their higher self. Do we love them enough to get out of our own way to ask them if they're open for reflection or feedback. Now, with our kids, maybe not, but with our sisters, we would. And so, because we don't want to just throw up on someone and share if they don't want to know. And I think that's what a lot of women think they're doing when they're relating. If they're relating to people because they're not one-upping each other. Women primarily want to actually be what they want sameness. So if you've ever heard someone talk about a problem, like, oh yeah, that happened to me too, or oh yeah, that happened to me too, and it makes us feel aligned, but it actually because it makes us feel safe. So my thing is that can we just flip it on its lid and actually start relating to people on the positiveness? And so that stage 3 is where we would be willing to say, hey, I know who you are. Let me give an example. I had a friend of mine who her marriage was rocky, and a dear friend of mine, and we've known each other for a really long time, over 20 years. And she was thinking about stepping out on her relationship, right? Which we all know that's not a good idea. But she was just so forlorn, and that's where she was going. And there were a couple other friends who they didn't say anything to her. They just talked about her behind her back, which wasn't very kind. And I took her to lunch and I asked her, hey, are you open to some reflection and feedback? And she said, yeah. And I said, I know who you are. And I also see you and I know you're hurting. I know that you're in a space right now of what's barren. And, I know who you are. And I'd like to reflect some things back to you. And I just shared where I had seen her in her relationship, emasculate her partner, other things like that. But also I validated her feelings along the way. Now, I don't think that she ended up having the affair and she's with her husband, they're happy. And I'm not saying it was that conversation, but it's in those micro moments that we can make a difference, right? We can make a huge difference in someone's life by being brave and courageous and saying, I see you and I know who you are. And I know this isn't your higher self. So to me, I only have close friends like that. People that will call me out in love if I'm not walking the walk. And I think that is how we keep each other sharp. That's how we, keep each other in alignment. And we've all had those friends that kind of like let us get away with murder. And that doesn't help the world, right? It doesn't help us. I want someone to love me so much that they're willing to risk our friendship.
Right.
Because they know, right, I'm not walking the walk.
So
Until next time.
there is strength in sisterhood.
And support it, sisterhood.
Bye.
Bye.